For nearly 20 years now, we've watched one guy completely hypnotize the globe. I mean, he's drawn the eyes of billions to pitches all the way from Barcelona to Buenos Aires. Welcome to This Explainer, where we're digging into some source material that presents a pretty bold premise. Lionel Andreas Messi didn't just play the sport of football, he fundamentally redesigned it. Look, whether you're a hardcore tactical analyst who breaks down every single phase of play, or you're just someone fascinated by what human beings can do at their absolute physical and mental peak, this goes way beyond the standard record books. We're talking about a career that defied logic, broke defensive systems, and literally forced us to rethink what's even possible out there on the grass. Our source actually kicks things off with this incredible thought. Greatness is measured by trophies, legends are measured by moments. But once in a generation, a player comes along who changes the meaning of football itself. And that right there sets the stage for everything we're about to unpack. There's a huge difference between simple greatness, enduring legends, and those super rare generation-defining anomalies. Think about where his story starts, right? A quiet kid from Rosario, Argentina. He wasn't the tallest. Actually, he needed medical treatment just to reach an average height. He wasn't the fastest sprinter, and he for sure wasn't the strongest guy in a physical duel. By all conventional athletic logic, in a modern game packed with towering, hyper-athletic machines, he should have just been pushed off the ball and forgotten about. Instead, he systematically dismantled entire defensive lines and basically rewrote football history from scratch. All right, let's get into Section 1, Redefining Football Immortality. You really have to transport yourself back to the era when Messi first debuted. Back then, a lot of fans and historians genuinely believed the pantheon of football gods was completely closed. We thought we'd already seen the absolute greatest players the sport could ever possibly produce. Pelé had already conquered the world 3 times, right? Maradona had literally achieved godlike immortality in 1986, and Cristiano Ronaldo was emerging as one of the most ruthless goal scorers we'd ever seen. But the source points out this fundamental difference with Messi. He wasn't just an elite scorer. He was the primary creator, the magician unlocking deep blocks, the midfield's conductor setting the tempo, and a cold-blooded finisher, all rolled into one person. We're talking about a guy who could seamlessly drop deep into his own half, thread an impossible geometry-defying pass through a total maze of legs, and then show up in the penalty box a few seconds later to casually tap it in. He didn't just master one role, he was essentially playing 3 different elite positions at the exact same time. Which brings us to Section 2, The Unstoppable Machine Falters. So just as everyone was crowning him this completely invincible force, there's a dramatic shift. He goes from these unprecedented heights to sudden, stark vulnerability. And it all starts right after this absolutely staggering peak. 91 goals in a single calendar year of 2012. 91! It's a record that sports scientists and historians still look at and think, that's just impossible in the modern game. To hit 91 goals, you're playing almost every 3 days, taking brutal tackles, flying across continents, and dropping a masterpiece every single week. Football had never seen a peak that so completely defied athletic logic. Defenders were terrified, and rival managers were openly admitting they had absolutely zero tactical plan to stop him. But the human body has limits, even for anomalies. The timeline of his career takes a really compelling turn right after that peak. In early 2013, his goals per game ratio was actually tracking even higher than his record-breaking year. But then, the immense physical toll finally demanded its price. A whole cascading series of muscle injuries struck, breaking his rhythm and totally stripping away that invincibility. For the first time, this unstoppable machine looked frail. He looked human. People actually started wondering if his physical peak had burned out completely. Yet he painstakingly pushed through all that physical breakdown just to reach the 2014 Brazil World Cup. He carried a pretty inconsistent Argentina team all the way to the final, and it felt like every dribble was powered by pure willpower rather than physical perfection. But the climax was just cruel. A late German goal shattered the dream, leaving Messi to take that infamous, slow walk past the Golden World Cup trophy. The image of him just staring at the prize he couldn't touch, hiding his heartbreak behind total silence, it really remains one of the most haunting visuals in modern sports. Moving into Section 3, The Burden of Heartbreak. That devastating final whistle in 2014 kicked off a remarkably dark period for him. In the eyes of his harshest critics, especially back home in Argentina, that silver medal wasn't seen as a miraculous run. It was weaponized as his ultimate failure. This suffocating mountain of criticism just started piling up. Pundits were loudly proclaiming he just didn't have the heart to win in an Argentina shirt. They said he wasn't a vocal leader. And worst of all, they insisted he could never step out of the colossal shadow of Diego Maradona. The national jersey basically became a straitjacket. And this psychological pressure cooker finally boiled over during a disastrous 2018 World Cup. A really disjointed Argentina squad struggled through the groups and then got completely blown away by France. At that moment, the whole world seemed ready to just close the book on his international career and stamp his legacy with a really bitter asterisk. But that wasn't the end. Here is Section 4, World Champion at Last. Look, for almost any other athlete in history, 2018 would have been the natural, if tragic, end to the story. A brilliant club career, but falling agonizingly short for his country. But our source material highlights how this was actually just setting the stage for the greatest final act football has ever seen. The 2022 Qatar World Cup wasn't just a victory lap for an aging star, it was a grueling, spectacular gauntlet where he literally put an entire nation on his back. First, there was the suffocating tension of the Mexico match, which he broke with a single, desperate, brilliant strike from outside the box when they were just minutes from going home. Then they got past Australia. They survived this incredibly toxic, fiercely tactical chess match against the Netherlands that ended in a fiery shootout. In the semifinal, he utterly dismantled Croatia, taking one of the best young defenders in the world on a dizzying run that rolled back the years. And finally, the ultimate showdown against France. In what pretty much everyone agrees is the greatest final ever played, Messi traded blows with Kylian Mbappe in this mesmerizing duel. When that final penalty hit the back of the net and Messi collapsed to his knees, the grueling wait was finally over. As the text says, millions cried, not because Argentina had won, because justice had finally arrived. The sheer weight of that moment totally transcends normal sports fandom. The one monumental trophy missing from his massive collection was finally his. It wasn't just a win for one country. For fans everywhere, watching him lift that gold trophy felt like a fundamental victory for the sport itself. It was this rare, beautiful moment where reality actually matched the perfect fairy tale. Now, the story could have ended perfectly right there, right? Walk off into the sunset. But a true obsession with the game rarely scripts a clean exit. The source outlines this fascinating anomaly, continuing the journey all the way into the 2026 World Cup. Just think about the physical reality of being a 39-year-old forward at an international tournament. Most elite attackers lose a step by 32 and quietly retire by 34. Yet, by adapting his game to rely on pure intellect, positioning, and unparalleled vision, he orchestrated Argentina's path to yet another final. He scored crucial goals, dictated the tempo, and inspired guys young enough to be his kids. And even though they ultimately fell just short against a magnificent Spain side, his performance proved a really vital point. True greatness isn't strictly defined by lifting the trophy at the very end. Sometimes it's defined by the relentless refusal to ever stop chasing it. Finally, we reach Section 5, the ultimate GOAT. Taking a step back from the timeline for a second, let's look at the anatomy of this incredibly sweeping career. So, why do millions of people around the world, without a moment's hesitation, call Messi the greatest of all time? When you strip away all the raw emotion and the romanticism of the story, and you look purely at the mechanics of how he plays, what are the exact traits that separate him from every other legend? Well, the answer lies in this uniquely lethal combination of skills that almost no player in history has ever possessed all at once. Elite players usually specialize, but here, you have the panoramic vision of a deep-lying playmaker, someone seeing passing angles 3 steps before anyone else even notices them. Combine that with the close-quarters dribbling of an absolute artist, keeping a center of gravity so impossibly low, the ball just looks glued to his boots. Add in the cold, ruthless finishing of a traditional number 9 who can chip a keeper or blast it top corner under insane pressure. Wrap all of that up in the terrifying consistency of a machine, doing this every single week for nearly 20 years. And, honestly, perhaps most refreshingly, he carries this quiet humility. He rarely spoke to the press, never demanded the spotlight. He just let his football speak way louder than any boast ever could. When you get into the inevitable comparisons, historical context is everything. Pelé set the ultimate standard for international success with 3 World Cups. Maradona gave the sport its most mystical, spellbinding individual peak back in '86. Cristiano Ronaldo gave us an awe-inspiring example of supreme dedication, longevity, and sheer goal-scoring dominance. Every single one of these icons changed the DNA of the sport. But the argument for Messi is all about synthesis. He took the playmaking genius and dribbling wizardry of a Maradona, and he sustained it with the ruthless, robotic consistency of a Ronaldo, and he stretched that impossible peak across 2 full decades. It's a level of multifaceted excellence that coaches and analysts argue has just never been matched. But as we wrap up this explainer, we have to realize that true greatness shifts the focus entirely. Whether every single football fan agrees on the GOAT debate is kind of aside the point. As the source beautifully puts it, true greatness isn't measured only by statistics, or trophies, or awards. It is measured by the generations inspired. His true legacy lives on in these incredibly vivid, human elements all over the globe. It's in the millions of kids in every conceivable corner of the earth begging their parents for a jersey with a number 10 on the back. It's remembered in the totally helpless expressions of world-class defenders whose years of elite training were dismantled by just a single drop of the shoulder. It echoes in rival stadiums, places that historically hated his team, that had literally no choice but to stand up and applaud because they knew they were watching pure art. And most importantly, it lives in that electric buzz that rippled through the crowd every single time he touched the ball. That collective holding of breath, driven by the absolute certainty that something impossible was about to happen. Football has known a lot of kings. We've celebrated countless legends, and we've idolized so many heroes. But for millions of people around the world, there has only been one GOAT. Lionel Andreas Messi isn't just a monumental part of football history, he's the architect of its modern immortality. So the question isn't just how he changed the game during his era, but whether the sport of football can ever possibly look the same without him.